The moment of decision had arrived. Fleet Commander Vask stared at the human ship on his tactical display, knowing that his next words would determine whether the galaxy's future would be shaped by cooperation or by the most devastating war in galactic history. The scan had revealed truths about humanity that changed everything the Zephyrian Empire thought they knew about warfare, civilization, and survival itself. "Open a communication channel to the human vessel," Vask ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of the decision he was about to make. "Channel open, sir," his communications officer reported. Vask took a deep breath, knowing that Admiral Corax and the entire War Council were monitoring this contact. The words he spoke next would either prevent a catastrophic conflict or begin humanity's introduction to galactic politics through violence. Captain Davis heard the incoming transmission and gestured for his crew to maintain their positions at battle stations. He had no idea that his ship had just caused the most significant crisis in Zephyrian history, or that alien leaders across the galaxy were debating whether humanity represented salvation or destruction for galactic civilization. "Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Vask of the Zephyrian Empire," came the alien voice through the Liberty speakers. "I request permission to speak with your commanding officer." Davis glanced at his crew, noting their readiness for combat, then activated his own communication system. "This is Captain Rick Davis, commanding officer of the Earth vessel Liberty. State your intentions, Commander Vask." On the Zephyrian flagship, the translation computers were analyzing every nuance of Davis's response. The captain's tone was firm, but not hostile, confident, but not aggressive. Most importantly, he showed no signs of the fear or submission that typically characterized first contact situations. "Captain Davis," Vask replied carefully, "the Zephyrian Empire wishes to establish peaceful relations with humanity. We believe our species could benefit from mutual cooperation." The word sent shockwaves through both fleets. The human crew stared at their captain in surprise, while the Zephyrian officers struggled to process their commander's unprecedented decision to offer alliance rather than demand surrender. Davis frowned, studying the tactical display that showed 12 alien ships surrounding his vessel. "Commander Vask, your fleet has adopted an aggressive formation around my ship. Your actions don't match your words." Vask realized immediately that the human captain had identified the contradiction between Zephyrian diplomatic words and military positioning. It was exactly the kind of tactical awareness that the scan had revealed as characteristic of human thinking. "You are correct, Captain Davis," Vask admitted. "I am ordering my fleet to withdraw to a non-threatening distance as a gesture of good faith." The Zephyrian ships began moving away from the Liberty, adopting loose formation that would still allow them to respond to threats but no longer appeared designed to attack or capture the human vessel. It was the first time in Empire history that a Zephyrian fleet had voluntarily reduced its tactical advantage during first contact with an unknown species. Davis watched the alien ships reposition themselves, his experienced eye noting that they maintained enough distance to avoid appearing threatening, while keeping enough firepower and range to defend themselves if necessary. It was a professional military decision that he could respect. "I appreciate the gesture, Commander Vask," Davis replied. "What kind of cooperation does the Zephyrian Empire have in mind?" Dr. Zala monitored the conversation from her science station, analyzing every word for insights into human psychology. The captain's response revealed exactly what the scan had predicted. Humans evaluated every situation in tactical terms, even during diplomatic negotiations. The Empire believes that humanity possesses unique capabilities that could be valuable in maintaining galactic peace, Vask explained, choosing his words carefully. "In exchange, we could offer access to advanced technologies and knowledge of galactic civilization." Davis considered the offer while his crew maintained their alert status. Lieutenant Chen was running continuous scans of the alien ships. Rodriguez kept weapon systems ready but not targeted, and Chief Engineer Walker monitored power levels to ensure the Liberty could respond to any sudden changes in the situation. "Before we discuss cooperation," Davis said, "I need to know what happened to our missing cargo vessels in this sector." Vask had been expecting this question. The scan had revealed that humans would never ignore attacks on their people, regardless of the political or military consequences of pursuing justice. Those vessels were seized by forces operating under Empire authority, Vask admitted. The cargo has been recovered and will be returned immediately, along with compensation for the delay. The honesty of the response surprised Davis. Most pirates or raiders would deny involvement or attempt to negotiate from their crimes. The alien commander was taking responsibility and offering restitution without being forced to do so. What about the crews of those vessels? Davis asked, his tone becoming harder. All personnel are safe and will be returned unharmed, Vask replied quickly. The Empire regrets the misunderstanding that led to their detention. Davis nodded slowly. The aliens' willingness to admit fault and make immediate restitution suggested genuine interest in peaceful resolution, rather than a tactical delay before attack. Commander Vask, Davis said, I'm willing to discuss cooperation, but any agreement would need to be approved by Earth government. I can arrange for diplomatic contact through proper channels. The response revealed another aspect of human psychology that impressed the Zephyrian observers. Despite being in a position of apparent weakness, the human captain was maintaining his authority and following proper procedures rather than making commitments beyond his authority. That would be acceptable, Vask replied. In the meantime, the Zephyrian Empire proposes a formal non-aggression agreement between our forces in this sector. Dr. Zala was monitoring the biological readings from both crews during the negotiation. The Zephyrian personnel showed stress levels consistent with relief that combat had been avoided. The human crew showed something completely different, disappointment that they would not have the opportunity to test their combat capabilities against advanced alien technology. Agreed, Davis said. But I want to make something clear, Commander. Vask. If any human vessels are attacked in the future, we will respond with appropriate force regardless of who is responsible. The statement was delivered calmly, but every Zephyrian listener understood it as both a promise and a threat. Humans would not tolerate aggression against their people, and they were prepared to fight anyone who threatened them. Understood, Captain Davis, Vask replied. The Empire will ensure that all of our forces are informed of the new relationship between our species. As the immediate crisis passed, both commanders began to realize the broader implications of this first contact. For the Zephyrian Empire, it marked the end of their policy of automatic conquest and the beginning of a new approach to galactic expansion based on alliance rather than domination. For humanity, it was their introduction to a galaxy filled with advanced civilizations, potential allies, and unknown threats. The Liberty's encounter with the Zephyrian fleet would lead to diplomatic contact between Earth and the Empire, opening new possibilities for human expansion into space. But perhaps most importantly, the contact established a new model for how advanced civilizations could interact with emerging spacefaring species. The scan that was intended to identify weaknesses for exploitation had instead revealed strengths worthy of respect. Over the following hours, the details of the agreement were worked out through careful negotiation. The Zephyrian Empire would return all captured cargo and personnel, provide compensation for damages, and establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth government. In exchange, humanity would consider future cooperation in matters of mutual interest. Dr. Zala prepared her final report on the human scan, knowing that it would become required reading for every military officer and diplomat in the Empire. The report concluded with a warning that would reshape Zephyrian policy for generations to come. Humans represent a new type of galactic civilization, she wrote. They cannot be conquered through superior technology or intimidated through superior numbers. They can only be opposed through superior commitment, and our analysis suggests that no species in the galaxy possesses greater commitment to their goals than humanity. However, the report continued, this same commitment that makes them dangerous enemies also makes them valuable allies. Their willingness to sacrifice for their principles, their ability to innovate under pressure, and their refusal to accept defeat could be enormous assets if directed toward mutual goals rather than opposition. Admiral Corax read the report with satisfaction. The Empire had avoided a potentially catastrophic war, and gained a potential ally whose capabilities could strengthen Zephyrian security throughout the galaxy. More importantly, they had learned that some species were more valuable as partners than as subjects. Captain Davis received new orders from Earth Command within days of his report reaching home. The cargo ships were returned as promised. Their crews treated well during their detention. Diplomatic delegations were exchanged and formal treaties were signed establishing trade. The completed scan results were transmitted instantly across the Zephyrian fleet, and then to the Empire's High Command, spreading panic through the highest levels of alien leadership faster than any weapon could have traveled. For the first time, in their 200-year history of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire faced a crisis that their superior technology could not solve. Admiral Corax received the transmission aboard his flagship at the edge of Zephyrian space. As the supreme military commander of the Empire, he had overseen the conquest of 47 star systems. He had never experienced defeat, never retreated from battle, and never questioned the Empire's ability to overcome any enemy through superior firepower and advanced technology. The scan results changed everything. "This cannot be accurate," Corax said, after reading the initial report. His voice carried none of its usual confidence. "Order Fleet Commander Vask to repeat the scan. These readings must be in error." His science advisor, an elderly Zephyrian, named Dr. Keth, shook his head gravely. "Sir, the scan was conducted 3 times with identical results. The readings are accurate. We have encountered something unprecedented." Admiral Corax studied the data with growing alarm. Every aspect of human behavior defied the Empire's understanding of how civilized beings should act when faced with superior force. The psychological profiles, the cultural analysis, the military preparations, all of it pointed to a species that was fundamentally different from anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. "They show no fear response," Dr. Keth explained, highlighting the biological readings from the human crew. "When most species detect potential threats, their stress levels increase in preparation for flight or defensive action. These humans show excitement and anticipation. They appear to welcome the possibility of combat." The Admiral had built his career on the predictable responses of alien species to Zephyrian contact. Fear led to submission, submission led to control, and control led to conquest. But humans seem to operate according to completely different psychological principles. Their entire culture is organized around conflict. Dr. Keth continued. "They do not fight to defend themselves or their territory. They fight because fighting is what defines them as a species." Meanwhile, aboard the Liberty, Captain Davis was making preparations that would have horrified the Zephyrian observers if they had understood their full implications. He was not planning to surrender, negotiate, or retreat. He was planning to attack. "Rodriguez," Davis called to his weapons officer. "What's the status on our experimental railgun modifications?" "Fully operational, sir," Rodriguez replied with satisfaction. "The new targeting system should give us a significant advantage against ships that rely heavily on energy shields." Davis nodded approvingly. The modifications had been developed, specifically for fighting technologically advanced enemies. Human engineers had studied captured alien technology and designed weapons that could exploit the weaknesses they had identified in advanced defensive systems. "Chen, have you completed the analysis of their ship configurations?" Davis asked his sensor officer. "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Chen responded. "Their vessels appear to prioritize speed and firepower over armor protection. If we can get close enough, our weapons should be able to penetrate their hulls." The conversation was being monitored by the Zephyrian scanning systems, and the translation computers were struggling to process the tactical implications of what the humans were discussing. Most species would be planning escape routes or preparing surrender terms. The humans were planning an attack strategy. Back in Zephyrian space, the Empire's War Council was convening an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of conquered worlds gathered via holographic communication to discuss the implications of the human contact. The debate that followed would reshape the Empire's approach to galactic expansion. The scan results indicate that humans represent a threat unlike any we have previously encountered, began General Vex, the Empire's chief strategic planner. They possess psychological and cultural characteristics that make them extremely dangerous opponents. regardless of their current technological limitations. The council members studied the transmitted data with growing concern. The human approach to warfare, their willingness to sacrifice individual lives for collective goals, and their ability to innovate under pressure were all factors that could not be countered through superior technology alone. They have developed tactics specifically designed to defeat technologically superior enemies, General Vex continued. Their military doctrine assumes they will always be fighting opponents with better weapons and more advanced equipment. Counselor Zara, a representative from one of the Empire's oldest conquered worlds, raised a critical question. How is it possible for a species to develop such extensive military capabilities while remaining technologically primitive? Dr. Keth provided the answer that sent chills through the assembled council. They are not technologically primitive. They have simply focused their technological development entirely on military applications. Every scientific advance, every engineering innovation, every cultural development has been directed toward improving their ability to fight and win wars. The implications were staggering. While other species had divided their efforts between peaceful pursuits and military necessities, humans had concentrated everything on becoming the most effective warriors possible. They had sacrificed comfort, luxury, and even safety to maximize their combat capabilities. They represent evolutionary specialization taken to its logical extreme, Dr. Keth explained. While other species evolved to be generalists capable of adapting to various environments and situations, humans evolved to be specialists focused exclusively on conflict and competition. Admiral Corax was studying the tactical assessments with particular interest. The human ship was outnumbered 12-1 by vessels with superior technology, yet the scan indicated that the crew was preparing for offensive action rather than defensive measures. They believe they can win, he said with something approaching admiration. Against impossible odds facing superior technology and overwhelming numbers, they genuinely believe they can achieve victory. The psychological profiles of the human crew were particularly disturbing to the Zephyrian leadership. Each individual showed stress responses consistent with anticipation and excitement rather than fear and anxiety. They were not being forced to fight against their will. They wanted to fight. Their crew volunteered for this mission, Dr. Keth reported. They specifically requested assignment to the most dangerous duties available. They view combat against unknown alien species as an opportunity rather than a threat. The cultural analysis revealed that humans had developed sophisticated methods for psychological preparation that allowed them to function effectively in combat situations that would paralyze most other species. They trained constantly for warfare, practiced tactical scenarios until they became instinctive, and developed mental techniques for maintaining focus under extreme stress. They do not break under pressure, General Vex observed. If anything, they become more effective. As the situation becomes more desperate, the War Council was forced to confront a reality that challenged everything they believed about galactic conquest. The Zephyrian Empire had succeeded because most species valued survival above all else. When faced with the choice between death and submission, rational beings chose submission. But humans appeared to have different priorities. They value victory more than survival, Counselor Zara said slowly, beginning to understand the full implications of the scan results. They would rather die fighting than live under foreign rule. This revelation transformed the strategic calculations that governed empire expansion. Previous conquests had been relatively bloodless affairs. Most species surrendered after a brief demonstration of Zephyrian superiority, but humans might fight to the last individual, inflicting maximum casualties even in defeat. The cost of conquering humans would be unprecedented, Admiral Corax admitted reluctantly. Even assuming we achieved victory, the losses in ships and personnel would be enormous. But the War Council faced an even more disturbing possibility. The scan had revealed that humans possess tactical innovations and psychological advantages that might allow them to achieve victory despite their technological disadvantages. The Empire's military doctrine was based on predictable enemy responses to superior force. Humans were completely unpredictable. They might actually win, Dr. Keth said quietly, voicing the fear that was growing in every council member's mind. The discussion turned to the broader implications of human expansion into space. If one human ship could pose such a significant threat to a Zephyrian fleet, what would happen when humans began building larger fleets with more advanced technology? They learn from every encounter, General Vex pointed out. Every battle they fight, whether victory or defeat, makes them more dangerous. They study their enemies, adapt their tactics, and incorporate new knowledge into their military doctrine. The scan had revealed that humans possessed something the Empire had never encountered: the ability to turn defeats into advantages. They analyzed their losses, identified their mistakes, and developed new strategies to avoid repeating them. More frightening, they shared this. The final phase of the Zephyrian scan penetrated the deepest levels of the Liberty's computer systems, accessing military databases that contained humanity's most carefully guarded secrets. What the aliens discovered in these classified files would transform their understanding of warfare itself and fill them with a terror unlike anything they had ever experienced. Dr. Zala's hands trembled as she accessed the restricted military files. "Commander Vask," she called out, her voice barely controlled. "The scan has reached their classified strategic databases. What we are finding is beyond our worst fears." Vask rushed to her station, his dark eyes reflecting the growing panic that was spreading through his command staff. "Show me what you have discovered." The first files that appeared on their screens contained detailed analyses of every alien species that humans had encountered during their brief expansion into space. But these were not diplomatic or scientific reports. They were military assessments that cataloged the weaknesses, strengths, and potential combat capabilities of each race. "They have been studying us," Dr. Zala whispered. "Not just the Zephyrian Empire, but every species they have met. They analyze each new contact as a potential enemy and develop strategies for defeating them." The files contained detailed breakdowns of Zephyrian ship designs, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines. Somehow, despite their primitive technology, the humans had managed to gather intelligence on the Empire's military capabilities. More disturbing was what they had done with that information. They have identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in our standard ship designs, the tactical officer reported with growing alarm. Weaknesses that our own engineers never considered. The scan revealed that human military analysts had spent months studying every scrap of information available about Zephyrian technology. They had analyzed debris from destroyed ships, intercepted communications, and even studied the energy signatures of Zephyrian vessels from a distance. From these limited sources, they had constructed surprisingly accurate assessments of Empire capabilities. "Their intelligence analysis is remarkable," Dr. Zala admitted reluctantly. "They have deduced the function of our weapon systems from passive sensor readings alone. But the military files contained something far more disturbing than intelligence gathering. The humans had developed specific tactical plans for fighting technologically superior enemies. They had studied the history of asymmetric warfare and created detailed doctrines for defeating opponents who possessed better weapons and more advanced technology. They have planned for fighting us," Vask said slowly, reading through the tactical manuals with growing unease. "Not just general defensive strategies, but specific methods for engaging Zephyrian forces." The files contained battle plans that took advantage of every weakness the humans had identified in Empire ship designs. They had developed tactics for using their primitive weapons against advanced Zephyrian armor, strategies for avoiding the Empire's most powerful weapons, and methods for turning Zephyrian technological advantages into liabilities. "They understand that superior technology creates dependencies," the science officer observed as he studied the human tactical doctrine. "They plan to attack those dependencies rather than compete with our advantages." Captain Davis continued his careful observation of the alien vessels, unaware that his ship's computers had just revealed humanity's most sensitive military secrets. He was focused on the immediate tactical situation, but his mind was already working through contingency plans that would have horrified the Zephyrians if they had understood what he was thinking. "Chen," he called to his sensor officer, "are you detecting any communication between their ships?" "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Chen replied. "Encrypted transmissions on multiple frequencies, They appear to be coordinating their positions around us. Davis nodded thoughtfully. The aliens were probably planning to surround his ship and demand surrender. It was a logical tactic when dealing with a technologically inferior opponent. Unfortunately for the aliens, humans had spent centuries developing methods for dealing with exactly this situation. The scan penetrated deeper into the Liberty's tactical computers, revealing the ship's current battle plans. What the Zephyrians discovered there defied all logic and military doctrine. They are not planning to surrender or retreat, Dr. Zala reported with disbelief. Even though they are outnumbered 12-1 by technologically superior forces, they are preparing for offensive action. The battle plan showed that the humans intended to attack the Zephyrian fleet rather than attempt to escape. More shocking was the sophistication of their strategy. Despite their inferior technology, they had identified specific ways to damage or destroy Empire vessels. They plan to use our own weapons against us, the tactical officer said, studying the human strategy with growing respect and fear. Their attack plan calls for disabling our ships and capturing our technology. The files revealed that humans had developed specialized techniques for boarding enemy vessels during space combat. They had created equipment for cutting through alien hull materials, weapons designed for fighting in zero gravity, and tactics for taking control of enemy ships from the inside. They do not simply plan to fight us, Vask realized. They plan to steal our ships and use them against us. The scan accessed the Liberty's communication logs, revealing that Captain Davis had already transmitted detailed information about the Zephyrian contact to other human vessels. Within hours of detecting the Empire ships, he had sent encrypted messages containing tactical data, sensor readings, and preliminary assessments of alien capabilities. They have warned their entire fleet about us, Dr. Zala observed. Every human ship in this sector now knows about our presence and capabilities. But the communication logs revealed something even more disturbing. The humans had not sent requests for help or evacuation. Instead, they had transmitted detailed battle plans and requested that other human vessels move to intercept any Zephyrian ships that might escape from the coming engagement. They are not asking for rescue, the science officer reported with growing amazement. They are organizing a coordinated attack on our entire fleet. The scan revealed the true scope of human military preparation. The files contained contingency plans for conflicts with dozens of potential enemy species, detailed analyses of alien technologies, and strategic assessments of threats that humans had never actually encountered. They have been preparing for galactic warfare since they first achieved space travel, Dr. Zala said with something approaching awe. Every exploration mission, every diplomatic contact, every peaceful encounter has been treated as preparation for future military conflict. The military databases contained research into exotic weapons technologies that the humans were developing specifically for use against alien enemies. Energy weapons designed to disrupt non-human nervous systems, computer viruses tailored to attack alien software, and biological agents that would be harmless to humans but deadly to other species. They are developing species-specific weapons, Vask said quietly. They plan to fight every alien race they encounter, and they are preparing unique methods for defeating each one. The scan revealed humanity's approach to intelligence gathering, and the findings were deeply disturbing to the Zephyrian observers. Humans had developed sophisticated techniques for infiltrating alien societies, stealing advanced technologies, and gathering military intelligence without being detected. They have agents throughout the galaxy, the science officer reported. Human operatives have been placed in dozens of alien civilizations, gathering information and preparing for possible conflicts. The files contained detailed reports from these agents describing the military capabilities, political structures, and potential weaknesses of numerous alien species. The humans had been quietly building a comprehensive database of galactic civilizations, treating each one as a potential target for future conquest. They are not exploring the galaxy, Dr. Zala realized. They are surveying it for conquest. The scan accessed the Liberty's training programs, revealing how humans prepared for combat against alien enemies. The files contained simulation programs that allowed human warriors to practice fighting against dozens of different alien species, using accurate recreations of their weapons, tactics, and physiological capabilities. They train specifically for fighting us, the tactical officer observed. Their soldiers practice combat scenarios against virtual Zephyrians until they know our capabilities better than we do. The training programs were updated constantly with new information gathered from every human contact with alien species. Each diplomatic meeting, each trade negotiation, each peaceful exchange was analyzed for military intelligence that could be used in future conflicts. Every interaction they have with alien species makes them more dangerous, Vask observed grimly. The scan revealed the human approach to technological development, and the findings confirmed the Zephyrians' worst fears about this species. Humans did not develop new technologies for peaceful purposes and then adapt them for military use. Instead, they developed military technologies first and then found peaceful applications for them. Their entire technological advancement is driven by warfare. The Zephyrian scanning beam dove even deeper into the Liberty's systems, accessing the ship's historical databases and cultural archives. What the aliens discovered next would fundamentally change their understanding of what it meant to be human. Doctor. Zala stared at her screen in growing horror as the scan revealed humanity's complete history. Commander Vask, you need to see this immediately. The historical records are beyond anything we could have imagined. Vask hurried to her station, his expression growing more concerned with each passing moment. What have you found, Doctor? Their species has been at war continuously for over 5,000 years, Zala whispered. Not occasional conflicts between different groups, but constant, unending warfare. They have never known a single generation of complete peace. The scan had accessed the Liberty's educational databases, revealing how human children learned about their species' past. The history lessons did not focus on art, science, or philosophy, as most civilized species did. Instead, they concentrated on battles, military leaders, and strategic innovations that had shaped human development. Look at this, Zala said, highlighting a section of the educational materials. They teach their young about something called the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 warriors chose to die rather than retreat. They present this as heroic behavior that should be admired and copied. The Zephyrian translation computers struggled with many human historical concepts. Words like honor, glory, and sacrifice had no direct equivalents in most alien languages. The closest translations suggested concepts that would be considered mental illness in civilized society. They have a word called martyrdom. The Yagya science officer reported from his station. It means choosing to die for a cause rather than live in defeat. They consider this the highest form of human behavior. Vask studied the historical records with growing unease. Every major period in human development had been marked by warfare. When they developed agriculture, they used it to support larger armies. When they invented writing, they used it to record military tactics. When they discovered chemistry, they turned it into explosives. Their technological advancement has been driven entirely by military necessity, Dr. Zala observed. They did not develop space travel to explore the universe. They developed it to extend their ability to fight wars. The scan revealed humanity's approach to scientific research, and the findings were deeply disturbing. While most species pursued knowledge for its own sake, humans seemed to view every scientific discovery as a potential weapon. Their research into physics had led to nuclear bombs. Their study of biology had produced chemical weapons. Even their medical advances were often motivated by the desire to keep soldiers fighting longer. They have weaponized mathematics, the science officer reported with disbelief. They use complex calculations to predict enemy movements and optimize the effectiveness of their attacks. The historical databases contained detailed records of human conflicts throughout their development. The Zephyrians discovered that humans had fought wars over resources, territory, religion, politics, and sometimes for no apparent reason other than the desire to prove their superiority over other groups. They have a concept called total war, Dr. Zala explained to the increasingly worried command staff. It means involving every member of their society in military conflict. Not just soldiers, but civilians, children, even their elderly contribute to warfare efforts. The scan revealed records of conflicts where entire human populations had been mobilized for battle. Factories that normally produced consumer goods were converted to manufacture weapons. Scientists abandoned peaceful research to develop new, military technologies. Artists created propaganda to inspire their people to fight harder. During their most serious conflicts, they transformed their entire civilization into a war machine, Zala continued. They subordinated every aspect of their society to the goal of defeating their enemies. Captain Davis remained unaware of the crisis his ship's historical records were causing among the alien observers. He was focused on the tactical situation, studying the energy signatures of the unknown vessels that continued to scan his ship. "Rodriguez," he called to his weapons officer, "what's your assessment of their capabilities?" "Sir, their energy output suggests weapons significantly more advanced than ours," Rodriguez replied. "But their ship design has some interesting vulnerabilities. They seem to prioritize speed and firepower over defensive systems." Davis nodded thoughtfully. Even when facing superior technology, his mind automatically analyzed the situation for potential tactical advantages. It was a distinctly human response that would have horrified the aliens if they had understood its significance. The scan delved deeper into human military philosophy, revealing concepts that challenged everything. The Zephyrians thought they knew about civilized behavior. Humans had developed detailed theories about when warfare was justified, how it should be conducted, and what constituted victory. "They have something called rules of war," the science officer reported. "But these rules are not about avoiding conflict. They are about making conflict more efficient and effective. The rules of war that humans had developed were designed to maximize their ability to defeat enemies while minimizing waste of resources. They prohibited certain weapons not because they were too cruel, but because they were not cost-effective. They protected certain types of non-combatants not out of mercy, but because killing them provided no strategic advantage. Even their attempts at moral behavior are focused on improving their ability to wage war," Dr. Zala observed with growing alarm. The scan revealed human literature and philosophy, showing how their greatest thinkers had grappled with questions of conflict and violence. But rather than seeking ways to eliminate warfare, most human philosophers had focused on understanding how to fight more effectively and when violence was the appropriate response to problems. Their greatest military theorist wrote that war is the continuation of politics by other means, Zala read from the translated texts. They do not view warfare as a failure of diplomacy. They view it as another form of diplomacy. The historical records showed that humans had developed increasingly sophisticated methods of warfare as their technology advanced. They had progressed from fighting with simple weapons to using nuclear devices capable of destroying entire cities. But even when they possessed the power to eliminate all life on their planet, they had continued to seek new and more effective ways to fight. They achieved the ability to destroy their own world and used it as a bargaining tool in their conflicts, the tactical officer reported. They threatened mutual annihilation rather than accept defeat. The scan revealed the concept of deterrence, where humans prevented wars by promising that any attack would result in retaliation so devastating that victory would be meaningless. It was a strategy that required a willingness to destroy everything, rather than lose. They would rather die than be conquered, Vask realized, and they would rather destroy their enemies than allow them to survive a victory. The cultural archives contained records of human entertainment throughout their history, stories, songs, and games that revealed how deeply warfare was embedded in their psychology. Their heroes were warriors, their greatest achievements were military victories, and their most cherished values were courage, determination, and the refusal to surrender. They celebrate violence, Dr. Zala said with growing understanding, not as a necessary evil, but as the highest expression of human virtue. The scan revealed how humans raised their children, and the findings were particularly disturbing to the Zephyrian observers. Human parents taught their offspring to compete aggressively from an early age. Children's games involved mock battles, sports emphasized defeating opponents, and educational systems ranked students against each other in constant competition. They trained their young for conflict from birth, the science officer observed. Competition and aggression are not aberrant behaviors in their society. They are fundamental requirements for success. The historical databases showed how human societies had organized themselves around the needs of warfare. Their governments were structured to mobilize resources for conflict. Their economies were designed to support military activities. Even, their religions often emphasized the spiritual value of fighting for righteous causes. Every aspect of their civilization serves their capacity for warfare, Dr. Zala summarized for the command staff. They have not developed a society that occasionally fights wars. They have developed a society that exists specifically to fight wars. The scan revealed human attitudes toward death in battle, and these findings were perhaps the most alien concepts the Zephyrians had yet encountered. Humans who died fighting for their people were honored above all others. They were remembered in monuments, celebrated in stories, and held up as examples for future generations to follow. They do not fear death in battle, Vask said slowly. They aspire to it. The cultural records showed that humans had developed elaborate ceremonies to honor their war dead. Families took pride in members who had died fighting. Communities competed to send more volunteers to dangerous military missions. Survival was not seen as success if it came at the cost of abandoning one's duty or comrades. The Zephyrian scanning beam penetrated deeper into the USS Liberty, moving through the ship's hull like water through a sieve. What the aliens discovered in the next few minutes would shake their understanding of civilized behavior to its very core. Dr. Zala watched her screens with growing alarm as the scan revealed the contents of the human crew quarters. Every single room contained weapons, not just standard military equipment, but personal items that served no purpose other than causing harm to other living beings. This cannot be accurate, she muttered, running the scan analysis for the third time. Commander Vask, you need to see this immediately. Vask moved to her station, his dark eyes studying the readouts. What am I looking at, Doctor? The crew's personal belongings, Zala replied, her voice tight with disbelief. Look at this reading from their living quarters. The display showed a detailed breakdown of items found in a typical crew member's room. Kitchen knives that had been sharpened to razor edges, far beyond what would be needed for food preparation. Books and digital files about combat techniques, weapon maintenance and military history. Even recreational items like games and entertainment programs that simulated warfare and violence. Perhaps they are simply well-prepared soldiers, Vask suggested, though his tone suggested he was not convinced by his own words. Sir, look at this, Zala said, highlighting another section of the scan. These are children's toys found in the EUR family quarters. Vask stared at the readings. The toys were miniature weapons, plastic guns, toy swords, and action figures dressed in military gear. Most disturbing were the games that taught children how to plan battles and defeat enemies. They train their young for warfare, Zala whispered. From the earliest age, they prepare their children to fight. The scan moved to the ship's recreational areas, revealing more shocking truths about human culture. The crew's entertainment center contained thousands of movies, books, and games. Nearly 30% of them dealt with combat, warfare, or conflict resolution through violence. Look at their music library, the science officer reported from his station. Songs about battles, victories in war, dying gloriously in combat. They have turned warfare into art. But it was the ship's training facilities that truly horrified the Zephyrian observers. Most civilized species had basic fitness equipment on their military vessels. The Liberty had what could only be described as a combat training complex. They have a full weapons range inside their ship, Zala reported with growing amazement. Not just for maintaining skills, but for improving them. The walls show impact marks from thousands of training sessions. The training area also contained equipment for hand-to-hand combat practice. Padded areas where crew members could fight each other, weapons designed specifically for sparring, and medical equipment clearly intended to treat injuries sustained during combat training. Sir, the tactical officer called out, I'm detecting something even more disturbing. Look at their ship's maintenance records. The scan had penetrated the Liberty's computer systems, revealing the vessel's complete history. What they found defied all logic and reason. This ship has been in 17 major battles, the officer continued. 17 separate combat engagements, and after each one, instead of requesting transfer to safer duties, the crew volunteered to remain aboard. Vask studied the maintenance logs with growing unease. Each battle had left its mark on the ship. Hull breaches had been repaired, weapon systems had been upgraded, and armor plating had been reinforced. But rather than weakening the vessel, each battle seemed to have made it stronger. They learn from every fight, he realized. They use their experiences to become better warriors. The scan revealed Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez's personal quarters, and what the Zephyrians found there would have been incomprehensible to most civilized beings. Rodriguez had served in 12 ship-to-ship battles during his career. He had been wounded 4 times, including once when shrapnel from an exploding console had nearly severed his left arm. Medical records showed that Rodriguez had spent 3 months recovering from that injury. As soon as he was cleared for duty, he had requested assignment to another combat vessel. When his commanding officer had offered him a safer position on a supply ship, Rodriguez had declined and signed up for an additional tour of duty on the Liberty. Their warriors do not seek to avoid combat, Dr. Zala observed with something approaching awe. They actively pursue it. The scan moved to the quarters of Chief Engineer Tony Walker, revealing another disturbing truth about human psychology. Walker's personal files contained detailed studies of enemy weapon systems, not just for defensive purposes, but to understand how they worked so that humans could build better versions. He has been reverse engineering alien technology for years, the science officer reported. Every time they encounter a new type of weapon, they study it, improve upon it, and add it to their own arsenal. Walker's quarters also contained personal journals that the Zephyrian translation computers struggled to process. The engineer wrote about each battle he had survived with something that could only be described as fondness. He described the challenge of keeping the ship's systems running under fire, the satisfaction of outlasting enemy vessels, and his excitement about facing new types of opponents. They do not fight because they must, Vask said slowly, beginning to understand the implications. They fight because they enjoy it. The scan penetrated the ship's medical bay, revealing perhaps the most disturbing evidence of human nature. Dr. Lisa Park, the Liberty's chief medical officer, had files that would have traumatized most civilized species. Her medical database contained detailed information on treating every conceivable type of combat injury: wounds from energy weapons, trauma from explosive decompression, burns from plasma fire, and injuries from hand-to-hand combat. But that was not what alarmed the Zephyrian observers. She has been researching ways to improve combat medicine, Dr. Zala reported, her voice barely above a whisper. Look at these files. Dr. Park had spent years developing new techniques for treating battlefield injuries, not just to save lives, but to return wounded soldiers to combat as quickly as possible. She had invented new surgical procedures that could repair damage in minutes rather than hours. She had developed drugs that would allow wounded personnel to continue fighting even with serious injuries. She has created medical procedures specifically designed to keep warriors in battle longer, Zala continued. They do not remove their injured from combat. They patch them up and send them back to fight. The medical bay also contained research into pain management techniques that would allow injured crew members to function normally despite wounds that would incapacitate most beings. Dr. Park had been studying human physiology to find ways to push the body beyond its normal limits. Their medical officer is not trying to prevent combat injuries, the science officer observed. She is trying to make combat injuries less of a disadvantage. The scan revealed personal logs from Dr. Park that confirmed the Zephyrians' worst fears. She wrote about her work with the pride of someone who believed she was serving a noble cause. She described wounded crew members who had begged to return to duty early, and her satisfaction when her treatments allowed them to do so. They view injury in battle as an honor, Vask realized. Not as something to be avoided, but as proof of their dedication to warfare. The scan moved through the ship's corridors, revealing more evidence of human psychology. The walls were decorated with images from past battles, paintings of famous military victories, and memorials to crew members who had died in combat. But these memorials did not mourn the dead. They celebrated their sacrifice and inspired others to follow their example. They honor their war dead by preparing for more war, Dr. Zala observed. The ship's library contained thousands of books on military strategy, weapons technology, and combat tactics. But it also contained works of fiction that glorified warfare and celebrated the warrior spirit. Stories of impossible victories against overwhelming odds, tales of soldiers who never surrendered even when facing certain death. Their entertainment teaches them that death in battle is preferable to survival through surrender, the science officer reported. The scan revealed the personal quarters of Sergeant Kate Miller, the ship's security chief. Miller's room contained an arsenal that would have equipped a small army, pistols, rifles, knives, and weapons that the Zephyrians could not immediately identify. Each weapon was perfectly maintained and showed signs of regular use. Miller's personal records revealed that she had killed enemy combatants in 17 separate engagements, but rather than showing signs of psychological trauma, her evaluation reports indicated that she was considered one of the most stable and reliable members of the crew. She has taken lives in battle and shows no remorse, Dr. Zala reported with growing alarm. According to her psychological profile, she views killing enemies as a necessary and honorable duty. The most disturbing discovery came when the scan analyzed Miller's training logs. She spent hours each day practicing with her weapons, not because she was required to, but because she enjoyed it. She had developed new fighting techniques and had written training manuals that were used throughout the human fleet. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the stars for over 200 years. Their ships moved faster than light itself, cutting through space like silver knives through black silk. Their weapons could turn entire planets into dust, and their scanning technology could tell them everything about an enemy before the first shot was ever fired. When Fleet Commander Vask detected an unknown vessel approaching the outer edges of their territory, he felt nothing but mild curiosity. "Sir, we have a contact," reported his sensor officer, a tall alien with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. "Unknown ship approximately 15,000 kilometers out and closing slowly." Vask didn't even look up from the tactical display he was studying. "Run a standard scan. Let's see what we're dealing with this time." The ship that appeared on their screens looked laughably primitive. It was made of simple metal alloys, the kind most species used when they first started building spacecraft. Its engines were basic chemical propulsion systems that would have been considered outdated technology 50 years ago. The weapons appeared to be nothing more than kinetic projectiles and crude energy beams. "Another backward species," muttered the tactical officer. "Probably just discovered faster than light travel and thinks they own the galaxy." Commander Vask had seen this scenario play out dozens of times before. A newly spacefaring species would stumble into Zephyrian territory, usually by accident. They would be scanned, catalogued, and given a choice: submit to the Empire's rule, or be destroyed. Most chose submission after seeing the overwhelming technological superiority of the Zephyrian fleet. Those who didn't choose wisely became object lessons for the next species to make contact. "Sir," the sensor officer said, "the scan is beginning now. Initial readings show a crew of approximately 200 beings. The ship appears to be some kind of military vessel, though poorly designed by our standards." Vask nodded absently. 200 beings on a single ship was actually quite large for most primitive species. Usually they packed their crews into cramped quarters with minimal life support. This ship seemed to have given its crew more space, which suggested either inefficient design or a culture that valued the comfort of its military personnel. Across the void of space, Captain Rick Davis stood on the bridge of the human destroyer, USS Liberty, completely unaware that alien eyes were studying his ship with growing confusion. He was a man in his early 40s, with graying hair and the kind of steady demeanor that came from 20 years of military service. His uniform was clean but showed the wear marks of someone who had seen actual combat. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Chen from her position at the sensor station. She was young, maybe 25, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I'm picking up some kind of energy signature. It's not matching anything in our databases." Davis turned toward her, his expression becoming more serious. "Distance and bearing?" "Approximately 15,000 kilometers, bearing 27 Mark IV. The energy signature is consistent with active scanning technology, but it's much more advanced than anything we've encountered before. The captain felt his pulse quicken slightly. Humanity had only developed faster than light travel 15 years ago. Every encounter with unknown technology was treated as potentially hostile until proven otherwise. Too many human ships had been lost in the early days of space exploration because they had been too trusting. "Sound general quarters," Davis ordered. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." The ship's alarm began to sound, a sharp tone that echoed through every corridor and compartment. Within seconds, the bridge became a hive of controlled activity as the crew prepared for possible combat. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez slid into his seat at the weapons control station, his fingers dancing over the controls as he brought the ship's armament online. Chief Engineer Tony Walker's voice came over the intercom, reporting that all systems were functioning normally and ready for combat operations. On the Zephyrian flagship, the sensor readings were becoming more and more puzzling. The alien crew's biological responses were unlike anything in their extensive databases of conquered species. "Sir," the science officer reported, his voice showing the first hint of uncertainty, "I'm getting some very strange readings from their crew." "What kind of strange?" Vask asked, finally looking up from his tactical display. "Their heart rates are increasing, but not in the way we would expect from a species detecting potential threats. Most civilized beings show fear responses when they realize they're being scanned by unknown technology. These creatures are showing something completely different." Vask frowned. In 2 centuries of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had encountered hundreds of different species. The biological responses were always the same: fear, panic, attempts to flee or hide. "What are they showing instead?" "Excitement, sir. Their brain activity patterns suggest they're actually getting excited by the prospect of encountering unknown forces. It's as if they're looking forward to whatever might happen next." This was unprecedented. Vask had personally overseen the conquest of 17 different star systems. He had seen every possible response to Zephyrian contact: terror, desperation, bargaining, even resigned acceptance. But never excitement, never anticipation. "Are you certain of these readings?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I've run the analysis 3 times. There's no doubt about it. These beings are becoming more alert and focused, but they're not afraid. If anything, they seem pleased by our presence." Dr. Zala, the Empire's chief xenobiologist, looked up from her own analysis station. She was an elderly Zephyrian with silver skin and wise eyes who had studied alien species for over a century. "Sir, I'm seeing some very unusual patterns in their ship's design as well." "Explain," Vask ordered. "Most species design their military vessels for defense or for quick strikes followed by rapid withdrawal. This ship appears to be designed for sustained combat operations. It has redundant systems, extra armor plating, and what looks like facilities for long-term battlefield repairs." Vask studied the readings more carefully. The human ship was indeed unusual. Where most primitive vessels had thin hulls and minimal protection, this one was built like a fortress. Its weapon systems were positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire, and it carried enough ammunition for an extended battle. "Sir," the sensor officer added, "there's something else. Their communications are increasing in frequency and intensity, but they're not distress calls or requests for help. They appear to be coordinating some kind of tactical response. On the Liberty, Captain Davis was indeed coordinating his crew's response to the unknown contact." "Rodriguez, what's our weapons status?" "All systems green, sir," the weapons officer replied. "Railguns loaded and ready. Missile tubes 1 through 8 armed and targeted point defense systems online." "Engineering, give me a status report," Davis called out. Chief Engineer Walker's voice came back immediately. "All systems functioning within normal parameters, sir. Engines ready for combat maneuvering, shields charged to full capacity, damage control teams standing by." Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's medical officer, reported from sickbay. "Medical teams ready for casualty treatment, sir. All emergency supplies prepared and distributed." Davis nodded with satisfaction. His crew had drilled these procedures hundreds of times, but this was different. This was real. Unknown aliens with superior technology were scanning his ship, and he had no idea what their intentions might be. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen reported, "the scanning beam is intensifying. Whatever they're doing, they're getting a very detailed look at our ship." "Can we block the scan?" Davis asked. "Negative, sir. Their technology is too advanced. The scanning beam is penetrating our hull like it's not even there." Davis made a decision that would have surprised the Zephyrian observers if they had understood its significance. Instead of trying to flee or hide, he chose to learn as much as possible about these aliens. "Chen, turn our sensors toward them. I want to know everything we can about their ship and their capabilities." "Aye, sir. Beginning active sensor sweep now." The human ship's sensors reached out across space, probing the Zephyrian vessel with primitive but determined curiosity. The readings they got back were sobering. The alien ship was at least 3 times larger than the Liberty, with energy signatures that suggested weapons and defenses far beyond human technology. "Sir," Chen reported quietly, "they're much more advanced than we are. If they want to destroy us, I don't think we can stop them." Davis nodded grimly. "Maybe not, but we'll make them work for it." The captain's response would have been completely incomprehensible to most species in the galaxy. When faced with superior force and certain destruction, the logical response was surrender or retreat. But humans had evolved on a world where the logical response wasn't always the survival response. "All hands," Davis announced over the ship's intercom. "This is the captain. We have made contact with an unknown alien vessel. Their technology appears to be superior to ours, but we are not going to run away. We are going to stand our ground and show them what humans are made of. Prepare for possible combat operations." The Zephyrian ship, the sensor officer was staring at his readings in disbelief. "Sir, their crew's biological responses just spiked again, but they're still not showing fear.